I'm presenting Jazirat al-Hamrah restoration project today. We've been working there for the last over 3 years, and we've been working in different areas, but today I'm just highlighting the key areas, our strategy, and some work results. I will not go into too much details, but in the future I'm hoping that there will be more specific presentations and lectures about the different key areas and the results. Before going into the project, I just want to make a point here. After the Julfar period, what we see in Ras Al Khaimah is there is a spread of urbanization in Ras Al Khaimah. Suddenly we see small villages, defensive structures, traditional mosques, watchtowers, and it's absolutely spread of urbanization in the northern region of Ras Al Khaimah. And side by side, what we see is new coastal towns appearing in the northern region. Most importantly, of course, is the old town of Ras Al Khaimah, but then we see Rams, Marid, and Jazirat al-Hamrah. In density and the scale, Jazirat al-Hamrah is next to the old town of Ras Al Khaimah. What makes Jazirat al-Hamrah important is we have all the important elements in Jazirat al-Hamrah. It covers 54 hectares. There are 450 traditional compounds, including 260 traditional compounds. We have a fort, we have 11 traditional mosques there, we have a complete souk, probably the largest in the whole of Ras Al Khaimah on the coastal towns. We have all sort of traditional compounds, big compounds, very rich in decorations and traditional elements, and small compounds. So the other important aspect in Jazirat al-Hamrah is we have complete evolution of traditional material. So this makes Jazirat al-Hamrah very unique and important. And the first master plan, we see TDIC Abu Dhabi started working on it, and then it was passed on to Ministry of Infrastructure, Abu Dhabi. Let me tell you that this is a joint project between Presidential Affairs Abu Dhabi, Ministry of Presidential Affairs Abu Dhabi, Ministry of Infrastructure Abu Dhabi, and Department of Antiquities and Museums, Government of Ras Al Khaimah. They started doing a very rough master plan, identifying the different zones, important structures, and then later when the Ministry of Infrastructure took over, and then the department, we started working more elaborately on the master plan. The idea is to not only conserve and restore Jazirat al-Hamrah, but also to revitalize and bring life back to Jazirat al-Hamrah. It is divided into 5 zones based on the traditional buildings or the number of the buildings and the later period architecture. The original idea was to create 3 access points for visitors to approach from 3 different areas and create clusters around these 3 points, and then later join these clusters and create pathways that people have the chance to go through the whole village and see all these different type of architecture and the life related to it. We see all important elements there in Jazirat al-Hamrah, and the idea and concept behind the master plan is to bring back all these important themes back to Jazirat al-Hamrah. We are planning to do small galleries, displays, revitalize the souk, convert some structures into cafes, restaurants, and also we are working an idea to create a boutique hotel. They are converting some compounds into boutique hotel. we are planning for different types of activities there and events and now going into the project, the restoration and conservation. The strategy we have developed so far is to first, we started working in phases. Originally, 3 years ago, we had no idea about the project or the scope of the work, or because every compound belongs to the families, it's private ownership. So we started from 3 structures, 2 mosques and a fort. And later we proposed phase 1B, where we included more 23 structures, and now we are preparing to move on to phase 2, where we are planning to include more compounds. The idea of the different phases or the selection of the compounds on the areas is that we have done a study to see the possibility and potential of Jazirat al-Hamrah in terms of culture heritage tourism. So we did an international study taking examples from all over the world to see how such sites can work and bring visitors. And the study suggested, instead of doing 3 different small clusters and developing them, it's better that we create a mass, and from this mass we later can expand our project into the other clusters. And these different colors shows all these different phases. We started from here, from the souk area, and the fort here, 1 mosque here and 1 mosque here. And then we included these 6 compounds in phase 1B, and now we are planning to start this area for boutique hotel and for retail. And when we finish these 35 compounds, then we will start working on next 35 compounds again, which will be converted into retail. Now, the strategy and work methodology we developed from the beginning is to do all these different steps before we go to restoration and conservation. We started preparing a team to do complete recording of the existing structures before we touch them, before we do anything, and then we move on to excavation. We also do very detailed study of the structure problems and intervention targets. We did series of tests and design new material, and based on all these information, then we do the restoration and conservation. For all these steps, we have developed research methodologies, and all these methodologies are interconnecting. We are constantly updating our methodologies to complement each step, because with every step it is important to coordinate with the other areas, and it helps in understanding more of the standing buildings and also the archaeology underneath. Starting from documentation, we have developed a very, very detailed process of recording the structures. We are giving context numbers to each element and features of the standing compounds. We are recording the building techniques, the material, phasing of the structures, and understanding the relationship of each structure to the other. We are creating orthographic elevation 3D models. We are producing written descriptions and also recommendations for excavations or restorations and conservations. This is just an example of the field work when we are recording the elevations and giving context numbers to each element on the site. We are creating photogrammetric elevations, drawings, detailed plans, very clearly marking all the different units and the different phases. So far, we have finished recording of 53 structures, and you can see here that the pattern we are following is the basic idea of creating 3 access points, and from there, in this area, we are planning to have the boutique hotel, and then here we will be doing the retail. This is Beit Abdul Karim. We are planning to convert this into a visitor center, and the fourth, we are planning to have a small museum or display there, talking about the craftsmanship behind the local weapons. And here is a historical mosque and Beit Umran. Here will be coming the 3rd access point and the activity area, and all these areas will be connected with pathways and informations. After finishing the documentation, then we plan and do excavation in every compound and or the open spaces. The scope of the excavation is to understand the different phases of the standing structures, because a lot of structures have collapsed. We remove the collapsed material very carefully, record them. We find a lot of information there, which is very, very helpful for the restoration and conservation process. Also, we check in the excavation the early levels and generally to understand the extension of the town, how it started and how it started spreading. This is an example what we find in our excavations. This is a mosque, and here we can see 3 different phases of the standing building. This is another example which is then much more complex, and this is a historical mosque, and we excavated it for 14 months non-stop. We were hoping that there will be just 1 or 2 structures underneath, but at the end what we found is there are 7 architectural layers, including 5 mosques. And this building is again very interesting and important, because one of the mosques was mentioned by the British surveyors when they were doing the coastal survey, and we found the mosque exactly which they have described, which you can see here in the purple color. The walls are missing, but only the negative is left here, but here the complete walls are here, and 2 entrances connected to the to 2 wells, one here and one here for evolution. So far we have finished 23 excavations, and 3 excavations are in the process, and when we finish these 3 excavations, we are planning to start more excavations here in this area, which will be later converted into the hotel. These are some of the trenches from different compounds, where you can see the density of the architecture and archaeology. Sometimes we find many layers. In the northern area of the village, we have sometimes 3-meter deep deposit and archaeology. And you can see, for example, here in this area that we have 5 phases of well. This is in one mosque, which was changed during time. This is one well, one is inside here, connected with this basin, then another one is here, and then one on top. These are some more pictures showing different trenches we have finished. And in this photograph, you can see this is the old souk, the foundations of the old souk and the old shops we have found. And in the future, we are planning to expand this area, because the souk we have now, it's from the late period. And we have found the foundations of the old souk, so we will expand our excavation to unearth the old foundations. We have good number of finds coming from the excavation. Small finds are not in big number, but pottery, we have really good number of pottery. So far we have recorded 35,000 pottery sherds, and we are hoping to get a few more thousands, and we are planning to start study in June to study the pottery in detail, which will help us to understand the archaeological sequence and also the socio-economic aspect of Jazirat al-Hamrah. When we finish the excavation, then we move on to start work on the restoration and conservation. And for this, first we try to understand the problems related to the structures. There are a lot of problems related to these structures because of the building techniques or the salt or groundwater problems. And here in these pictures, you can see some of the problems, either because there are no wall ties here or because of the corrosion and weak foundation. You see a lot of buildings are in danger. Here you can see it's because of the different type of material were used, like in the later period they started using the sand bricks, and later the steel and concrete, and because the material is not compatible with each other, and it causes a lot of problems and damages to the structure. So we have been studying all these problems for a long time, and we have a good idea of the problems in Jazirat al-Hamrah now. Some problems are very extreme, like in this case you can see that the salt and the corrosion, it goes up to the first floor, and you can see here in this picture that the corners are completely eroded and it's hanging in the air. And for such examples we really plan and extreme measures to stabilize these structures and protect it from total collapse. Also, we did series of tests in Jazirat al-Hamrah, taking samples from different compounds to understand the chemicals properties, compositions, mechanical properties, and this is very important for us because one of the reasons of the problems, the structure-related problems, is the mix and the mortar mix. So we try to understand the traditional mix, and based on the information, we changed the recipe, still keeping the traditional elements, but just changed the ratio of different things. Traditionally, they were using lime or gypsum-based mortar, and we have standardized this, and we are using lime for the mortar or the plaster. Again, this shows just some applications we have developed to deal with the problems and the structure-related issues. In this example, you can see that because of the construction was done in layers, and a lot of voids were left in between the courses, and this is one of the reasons for the problems in the compounds and structures in Jazirat al-Hamrah. So we have developed different applications to deal with such problems. This is another example of the applications we have developed, how to deal with the tying the walls or the cracks or the material they've been using, like concrete and steel, which is not compatible, and it is accelerating all the process of the decay. And this is how we have developed these techniques to treat these structures before doing the final plastering. Some examples and pictures from the different structures we are doing. We have we are working on 25 structures, and we are targeting to finish by end of May nearly 15 to 20 structures. Some more examples. We are also using Jazirat Hamrah project for education purposes, and we are inviting schools. The children come to the site. We have created programs for them and involve them in learning and understanding the excavation process or the conservation and restoration progress. Thank you very much for your attention.